Before we begin, take a moment to subscribe. Sometimes, the most powerful stories are whispered from dark corners. And when you hear them, you'll never forget. The basement was never meant to hold children. And yet, 9-year-old Liam Carter pressed his spine against the freezing wall of that dim concrete box, trying to find even the smallest ounce of comfort for his left leg, fractured, bruised, and swelling with every heartbeat. The injury had happened 2 days ago, and the sound of it, like dry wood snapping underfoot, still echoed in his mind. Rick's boot had done that. Liam hadn't screamed then. He wouldn't now. Next to him, curled up on the stained foam mat that pretended to be a bed, 6-year-old Noah, his little brother, shivered in thin pajamas that clung to his bony limbs. His blue eyes, too much like their mother's, were raw from crying earlier, though the tears had long dried. What was left now was the silence. The kind of silence that settles in when you know the crying won't help. "I'm hungry," Noah whispered, barely a flutter of breath. Liam wrapped one arm around his brother's small shoulders, drawing him close. "I know, bud. Just a bit longer." Above them, somewhere in the house, the television murmured faintly. Floorboards creaked like whispers. Then came the faintest clink of glass against glass. Rick was drinking again. There were no windows. No clocks. Only the single bulb overhead that buzzed like an insect and painted long shadows across the bare walls. Time wasn't real here. Only the rules were. No food. No water. No whining. Rick had explained those rules carefully, counting each one on his fingers as if he were teaching them arithmetic. They were in what he called the consequence room. What used to be their dad's old workshop, back when their father was still alive and the smell of pine and sawdust made the basement feel like possibility, not punishment. Now, there was only the mat, a white plastic bucket in the corner for waste, and the rules. Rick's rules. Rick had married their mom 2 years ago. He came with a strong handshake, a steady job, and promises. He stayed with silence, threats, and fists. Noah had knocked over a mug. Just a mug. Trying to clear the breakfast table like Rick told them to. But Rick didn't believe in accidents. Only consequences. And accidents, to him, meant time in the basement. Liam had tried to step in. Said something about showing instead of shouting. That was when the kick came. No warning. No hesitation. And now, his leg was broken. "Do you think Mom's coming back soon?" Noah asked suddenly, his voice catching in the quiet. Liam felt his throat close. Their mother had died in a car crash 6 months ago. But Noah still talked about her like she was just away. It hurt to lie, but it hurt more to tell the truth. "I bet she's thinking about us right now," Liam said. That was what he did. He lied gently. Soft lies. Lies that Noah could rest his head on. Their mom had known something. Not all of it, but enough. Enough to see how the boys always seemed tired, why Liam flinched when Rick raised his voice, why Noah wet the bed again. But she had been exhausted, grief was like fog in her brain. When Rick came with his strong arms and steady paychecks, she had chosen stability. The stairs creaked. Noah froze. Liam sat up straighter, gritting through the red-hot pain that flared in his leg. Rick was coming. The door groaned open. He stood there, wide frame filling the doorway. Faded army tattoo. Military buzz cut. Cold eyes. "Well," Rick said, voice syrup thick with disappointment, "have you learned your lesson yet?" Liam forced himself upright. Rick respected control. Or at least, he hated weakness. "Yes, sir." "We understand," Liam said, steady. Rick looked from him to Noah. "And you?" "I'm sorry about the mug," Noah mumbled. "I'll be more careful." Rick nodded, satisfied like a teacher with obedient students. "Good. Up. You've got 10 minutes to wash and be at the table." "I made dinner." Dinner was soup. Burnt toast. Silence. Afterwards, Liam washed dishes. Noah dried. They moved like clockwork, silent gears in Rick's machine. Tomorrow was Saturday. Rick mentioned a new project. Fixing up the basement. Adding shelves. Making the space more useful. Liam's stomach twisted. That room didn't need improvements. It needed to be erased from the earth. As they brushed their teeth that night, Noah whispered, "Sometimes my legs hurt too. After he grabs me." Liam crouched to eye level. He saw the faint bruises on Noah's arms. Fingerprints. Proof. "That's not normal," Liam said softly. "That's not how grown-ups are supposed to treat kids." "But Mom said mistakes mean learning," Noah said. "No," Liam replied. "Some people just use pain to control. That's not love." Noah looked thoughtful. "Do other kids have punishment rooms?" Liam stared at the ceiling, the shadows of the house dancing across the walls. "No," he whispered. "They don't." And as Noah drifted to sleep beside him, Liam made a silent vow. One day, they'd leave. Somehow. They would never see that room again. The night crept in slow and silent, like it always did in the basement. Time bent in strange ways down there, stretching, looping, disappearing altogether. Liam lay awake, eyes fixed on the water-stained ceiling, every inch of his body aching, but none more than his leg. The pain had changed. It wasn't sharp now, it pulsed, deep and low, with a heat that made his breath catch every few minutes. That wasn't normal. Even Liam, at 9, could tell the difference between pain you could walk off and pain that warned you something inside was going very, very wrong. Next to him, Noah clutched his stuffed polar bear, the one their mother had sewn together the Christmas before she died. One eye was missing. The seams were loose. But it was the last thing of hers they still had. Noah had fallen asleep mid-sentence. He'd been talking about their mother again, how maybe she was just lost, trying to find her way back. Maybe she'd gotten on the wrong bus. Maybe she was at the beach, waiting for them. Liam didn't have the heart to tell him the truth. Truth was crueler than any lie. And then Liam smelled it. Not all at once. Just a hint, a whiff. Acrid. Bitter. Smoky. His body reacted before his mind did. He sat up fast, too fast. His head spun. The pressure in the room felt off. The air felt thicker. Something was wrong. He nudged Noah. "Wake up," he whispered. "Noah, get up." Noah blinked. "Huh? Do you smell that?" Noah sat up, sniffed. His small face scrunched. "It smells like when Rick burns toast. But worse." Liam limped to the door, using the wall for balance. Every step was a war with his leg. But the smell, the warmth in the air that hadn't been there earlier, it pushed him forward. He pressed his ear to the wood. He heard it. Crackling. A sound like paper crumpling but deeper. A distant hiss. And silence from above. No TV. No footsteps. No drunken muttering. Only the fire. His pulse jumped. "Noah," he said, "urgent now. There's a fire. Upstairs." The words hung in the air like static. Noah froze. "Will Rick get us?" Liam's stomach dropped. Rick. Of course. He had locked them in. Like always. Rick had the keys. Rick had the power. Except Rick wasn't answering. Liam pounded on the door. "Rick! Rick, the house is on fire. Open the door." Nothing. Smoke was beginning to slip under the frame. Wisps at first. Then more. Liam's eyes burned. "Rick!" Still nothing. Noah had started coughing. A dry, raspy cough that sounded too big for his tiny chest. He clutched his stuffed bear tighter. Why won't he open it? Liam didn't answer. Because maybe Rick couldn't. Maybe Rick was passed out drunk. Maybe he'd already run. Maybe he was dead. Or maybe he just didn't care. Liam scanned the room. There had to be a way. The window was too small. The walls too thick. But the door frame. That might be their only chance. Noah, help me move the mat. Against the wall. Stay behind it. Why? I'm going to break the door. But how? Liam hobbled to the old weight bench in the corner. Rick's forgotten home gym. He found it, a thick metal bar, part of a disassembled dumbbell rack. Cold. Heavy. He gritted his teeth, limped to the door, and took aim. The first hit made his arms vibrate. The second made his broken leg nearly buckle. The third, something cracked. Noah peeked over the mat. It's working. Stay down. Liam shouted, coughing now. The smoke was filling the room. His eyes watered. His throat burned. He kept swinging. On the sixth hit, the wood splintered. On the seventh, he shoved the bar between the cracks and pried. With every ounce of strength he had left, he pulled. The frame groaned. The lock snapped. The door flew open. Smoke rushed in like a monster. Noah. We're going. Liam grabbed his brother's hand. They stumbled toward the stairs. Each step was fire. Not from the flames, but from the agony in Liam's leg. The heat hit them like a wave when they reached the top. The kitchen was on fire. Real fire. Cabinets melting. Curtains ablaze. Rick's recliner glowing with embers. Rick. There he was. Collapsed near the hallway. Bottles scattered. Face down. Is he okay? Noah asked. Liam didn't answer. There wasn't time. The front door was their goal. Smoke. Heat. Flames. They crawled. Low and fast. Then, a crash. A burning beam fell between them and the exit. Noah screamed. Liam felt his brother's grip loosen. Blood. Noah had been hit. He was bleeding. Crying. Shaking. Liam didn't think. He scooped him up. Pulled him under the smoke. One step. Two. The door was there. Locked. No. No. He fumbled. His fingers didn't work. The world was spinning. Everything was black and orange and screaming. He turned the knob. It opened. They fell into the front yard. Cold air slapped their faces. Grass. Real grass. Liam collapsed. His last thought before the dark came wasn't fear. It was relief. They were out. They were free. Smoke still clung to their skin. The grass beneath Liam's cheek felt damp and cold, like an old towel left in the rain. For one long, empty moment, he couldn't move. Couldn't think. Could only feel the world spin around him. Air was in his lungs, but it scratched like sandpaper. His ears rang with the echo of collapsing wood and the roaring snarl of fire. Then. Noah. The name shot through him like lightning. He forced his eyes open. Blinked. Next to him, his little brother lay still, his chest rising, shallow but rhythmic. His hand still clutched the stuffed polar bear. Liam let out a sound somewhere between a sob and a gasp. He reached for Noah, pulling him close. They had made it. Somehow. Against every rule Rick had taught them. Against the locked door, the smoke, the pain. They had gotten out. Liam coughed so hard he doubled over. His leg, now throbbing worse than ever, felt like it was on fire from the inside. He could no longer put any weight on it. But that didn't matter. They were out. That was all that mattered. Or so he thought. Because then, the house behind them groaned. A deep, guttural sound. Then a boom. A window shattered. Glass sprayed across the lawn. The fire was eating everything. And Rick. Rick was still inside. Was he alive? Did it matter? Liam felt the guilt try to rise, but it couldn't outrun the relief. Across the street, a woman screamed. Carol Henderson had been watering her roses when the smoke first appeared. At first, just a curl above the Miller rooftop. But now? Flames. She dropped the hose, shouted for her husband. Tom! It's the Carter's house. Tom emerged in flannel and slippers, newspaper still in hand. But one glance at the scene turned him from retired postman to emergency responder. Carol was already running. The boys on the lawn, soot-stained, clothes torn, one bleeding, the other limp. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Tom, call 911. Now." Tom didn't need the reminder. His phone was already at his ear. 2 children, he was saying, pulled themselves from a burning house. 1 unconscious. 1 injured. Carol knelt beside them. Her hands hovered before settling on Liam's cheeks. "Sweetheart. You're safe now. Do you hear me? Safe." Liam blinked slowly. His body was shutting down. His thoughts blurred at the edges. But he felt it. Warm hands. Gentle voice. "Not Rick. Is my brother okay?" "He's breathing," Carol said. "He's going to be fine. Just hold on." She turned to the growing circle of neighbors. Blankets. Water. And someone clear a path for paramedics. Sirens, in the distance now, wailed like wolves. Help was coming. Carol checked Liam's leg. Her nursing instincts kicked in like muscle memory. Broken. Swollen. Old injury. How long had he been walking on it? And then, she saw the bruises. Fingerprints. Faded yellow and purple on the boy's arms. Not new. Not from the fire. The front of the house collapsed with a thunderous roar. No one was thinking of Rick anymore. Not until Liam whispered. He locked us in." Carol turned. "What, honey?" Liam's eyes were glassy, but focused. "The door," he rasped. "It only opens from the outside." A silence rippled outward. The neighbors. Tom. Even the sirens seemed to dim. "What do you mean?" Carol asked gently. Liam coughed. "Rick, he locks us in. When we're bad. Says we need to think. In the basement. It's his punishment room." Carol's blood ran cold. "You mean, you were trapped down there?" He nodded. "I broke the door. With a pipe. I had to." Carol stared at him. Not just with horror. But with awe. A 9-year-old. With a broken leg. Saved his brother. Escaped a burning prison. Behind them, the fire trucks arrived. Hoses hissed. Firefighters surged. But nothing, would ever burn away what those boys had been through. Not fire. Not water. Only truth. And it had just begun to come out. Carol Henderson didn't waste time. She'd been a nurse for nearly 30 years before retiring, but instincts like hers never dulled. Her fingers moved swiftly, checking Liam's pulse, noting the color of his lips, the sluggish movements in his limbs, the shallow way he breathed. It wasn't just exhaustion, it was trauma. Smoke. Pain. Shock. And his leg. She didn't need x-rays to know it was broken, and not just recently. The swelling, the faint discoloration of old bruising, the awkward way he held it, protective and resigned, it told a story she'd seen too many times before. A story of a wound no adult had seen to. A story no child should ever live. Tom, she said, without looking away from Liam, tell them to bring oxygen. And a pediatric trauma kit. They're 5 minutes out, Tom replied, still on the phone, pacing. Noah stirred beside his brother. A whimper, a twitch. His small hand fumbled for the stuffed bear still pressed to his chest. Carol leaned over and gently swept soot from his forehead. Sweetheart, she murmured, you're safe now. We've got you. The little boy moaned something unintelligible, but she could see his lips move. She leaned in. David. It wasn't a name she recognized. But it didn't matter. He was calling for his brother. The fire crews arrived in a storm of sirens and red light. In seconds, the quiet suburban morning was swallowed by noise, orders barked over radios, water jets hammering the flames, boots pounding pavement. But none of that reached the space where Liam lay beside his brother. All he heard was Carol's voice. You're safe now. And then, a question. What did you say, sweetheart? He'd barely heard himself say it, but now he had to say it again. The door, Liam whispered. He locked it. From the outside. Carol paused. Even after all her years in emergency rooms, that sentence chilled her. What do you mean, Liam? He coughed again. His body racked with it. He called it the punishment room. Said it was for our own good. When we were bad. He made us stay. No windows. No lights, sometimes. Just, until he thought we'd learned. Silence swept through the group. One of the firefighters, having just walked up to assess the boy's condition, froze in place. Another neighbor, holding a blanket out, lowered it slowly. You mean he locked you two down there? Carol asked, gently. Liam nodded, wincing. He said, we were lucky. That most kids get worse. That if we told anyone, we'd be taken away. Separated. He looked over at Noah. I couldn't let that happen. So I didn't tell. Carol swallowed. Her hands were trembling now, not with fear, but with the rising current of fury beneath her skin. Liam, she said, softly but firmly. What happened today was not your fault. What he did, none of it, is your fault. Tears slipped from Liam's smoke-streaked face. He didn't sob. He didn't wail. But the tears came, silently, as if his body had finally found permission to let them go. Paramedics were on them now. Checking pulses. Assessing injuries. Carol stepped back to let them work, but she stayed close. Very close. Both stable, one EMT called out. Older boy has a fractured leg, possible untreated. Younger's got lacerations, mild smoke inhalation. We'll need to start O2 en route. What about the adult? A firefighter asked. We've got one pulled from the wreckage. Found in the living room. Alive? Barely. Rick, Liam murmured, eyes half-lidded. Did he get out? Don't worry about him now, Carol said. You've done enough, sweetheart. More than anyone should ever have to. The EMTs began loading the boys into stretchers, oxygen masks already in place. Liam grabbed his brother's hand and held it tight. I promised him, he said, voice muffled through the mask. I told him I'd protect him. That we'd get out. I had to break the door, but I did it. I got us out. Carol leaned in, placing her hand over his. You did more than that, she said. You saved his life. And yours. And now, we'll take it from here. Across the street, neighbors watched from behind fences and hedges. Shock on their faces. Regret, too. How had they not seen? How had they missed the signs? The two quiet boys. The shadows in their eyes. The long sleeves in summer. Tom exhaled and lowered his phone. I called the police. Not just fire. They're sending a detective. This is more than neglect. Carol nodded. It always was. She turned back to the ambulance as its doors closed behind the boys. As the engine roared to life and carried them away, Carol made a quiet promise, to herself, to the neighborhood, to two brave boys she'd barely known an hour ago. The world had looked away long enough. Now, it was time to look closer. When Detective Elena Morales arrived at 847 Maple Street, the sky was a dull gray, weighed down by the smoke that still clung to the street like fog. The fire had been tamed, but its damage remained, a blackened husk of a house, sagging like a broken jaw, and the stench of ash and memory thick in the air. She was met at the perimeter by a uniformed officer, young and tight-lipped. He handed her a clipboard and pointed toward the couple waiting by the sidewalk. "Tom and Carol Henderson," he said. "They pulled the boys out, or found them just after they escaped. Mrs. Henderson's a retired nurse. She gave them first aid. And, there's more." Elena nodded. She approached the couple slowly, scanning their faces. They weren't just shaken, they looked like people who had seen something they would never unsee. Carol spoke first. "The older boy's name is Liam. The younger is Noah. They said, they were locked in the basement. For punishment. For days at a time." Elena's pen hovered above her notepad. "Locked in?" Carol nodded. "Liam said Rick, their stepfather, called it the punishment room. Said they weren't allowed out until they learned their lesson. He'd been doing it for years. The door locks from the outside." Elena's heart sank. She'd heard stories like this before. But hearing and standing in front of a house that had been both prison and almost coffin, it was different. "And the leg?" she asked. "Old fracture. Untreated." Carol's guess was at least 4 days old. The boy walked on it. Broke out of a locked basement door. Carried his brother through a burning house. Elena didn't respond for a long time. Then, "Where is Rick now?" "Hospital," Tom said. "Barely made it out alive. Smoke inhalation. Burns." She nodded once, "Kurt. We'll interview him when he's stable. But my priority now is the boys." At Riverside General, the pediatric wing had been converted into a soft space of healing. The walls were lined with murals, balloons, clouds, animals that smiled. It was meant to feel like somewhere childhood still lived. But as Elena stepped into room 309, she knew that the two boys inside had walked too far past innocence to ever return to where they started. Liam sat propped up on a hospital bed, his leg elevated, a cast already hardened around it. His face was pale, hollow-cheeked. He looked too alert for a child who should be sleeping. Noah was curled up beside him, one arm bandaged, his stuffed bear held against his chest like a life vest. Dr. Nguyen, the pediatric attending, met Elena at the door. "They've had oxygen, fluids. Liam's strong. He's lucid. Noah's quieter, but physically okay. Has Liam said anything more about what happened?" "Bits and pieces. Enough to scare the hell out of us." Elena stepped in gently. "Hi Liam. I'm Detective Morales. I just want to ask you a few things. You don't have to answer anything you don't want to. Okay?" Liam gave a small nod. "Do you remember the fire?" Another nod. "Do you remember what happened before it?" This time, he spoke. "He locked us in. Again." "Who did?" "Rick." "What did he say?" Liam swallowed. His voice was a whisper. "He said Noah disrespected him. That he touched the neighbor's cat without permission. Said we needed to learn about boundaries. So he sent us down. Like always." Elena made a note. "How often did this happen?" "Depends. Sometimes a few hours. Sometimes overnight. The longest, 3 days. No food." "And your leg?" "He kicked me. When I told him to stop yelling at Noah. Said I needed to learn not to interrupt." Silence stretched between them. Even the machine seemed to hush. Elena spoke quietly. Liam, what you did, breaking out, getting your brother out of that house, you're a hero. Do you understand that? Liam's eyes shimmered, but he didn't cry. I just didn't want Noah to die. Noah stirred. For the first time, he looked at Elena. Are we going back? No, she said gently. You're not going back. He blinked. But Rick said if we told, they'd take us away. Make us live far apart. Carol Henderson stepped into the room behind them, her voice soft. They won't. I promise you, sweethearts. You're not being separated. Not now. Not ever again. Elena watched the way Noah leaned into Carol's side without hesitation, like he'd already chosen her as safe. She turned to Liam. One last question. Do you know why Rick did this? Liam was quiet for a long time. Then, he said it was to make us better. More respectful. But I think it made him feel big. Elena closed her notebook. That's all I need for now. Thank you, Liam. Thank you, Noah. As she stepped out into the hallway, Elena let herself exhale for the first time. This wasn't just a case anymore. It was a reckoning. Detective Elena Morales settled into the cold, sterile interview room of the Riverside Police Department, the weight of what she was about to uncover pressing on her chest like a physical burden. Across the table sat Liam Carter, a boy whose age belied the depth of his sorrow and strength. Though clean and dressed in soft hospital clothes, his eyes carried shadows that no child should ever know. Beside him, his younger brother Noah clutched a worn, threadbare blanket tightly, a fragile anchor in a sea of uncertainty. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the air conditioning and the scratch of Elena's pen against her notebook. She took a breath, meeting Liam's gaze, steady but guarded. Liam, she began, her voice calm but steady, I know this is really hard, but I need you to tell me everything about that room, the punishment room. I want to understand what you and Noah had to go through. Liam's small hands trembled slightly on his lap. His throat worked for a moment before words began to tumble out, hesitant but resolute. It was like being trapped in a nightmare. No windows, just cold walls made of concrete, rough, gray, and damp. The air smelled like dust mixed with fear. That's all we breathed down there. His voice cracked on the word fear, betraying the trauma beneath his calm exterior. He swallowed and forced himself onward. Rick, our stepfather, locked us in whenever he said we'd been bad. Sometimes it was only for a few hours. Other times, days. 3 days once after Christmas. No food, no water, just that, silence. His eyes flickered toward Noah, who squeezed his hand in response. Liam's lips tightened. The only thing we had was a thin, dirty mattress to lie on and a bucket. One bucket for water, and another, for everything else. You don't think about that stuff when you're little, but after a while, it's all you see. Noah's face was pale and pinched, the weight of the memory heavy even on his 6-year-old shoulders. He sat quietly, his grip on Liam's hand like a lifeline connecting them through the darkness. Elena listened, her pen racing to capture every detail. She felt the chill of the story seep into the sterile walls of the room, a story of neglect, fear, and unthinkable isolation. And Rick, she prompted softly. Did he ever come down to check on you? Liam's eyes flicked toward the door for a moment, as if hearing that tormenting presence behind it still. Sometimes. But mostly, he just left us there. We could hear him, laughing sometimes, watching TV, drinking beer. Like we didn't exist. His voice fell almost to a whisper. Tears shimmered in Liam's eyes but he fought to hold them back. I didn't want Noah to be scared. I didn't want him to think that was normal. Elena felt a lump in her throat. You were incredibly brave, Liam. Breaking down that door, dragging Noah out of the fire, it was an act of pure courage. Do you understand how special that is? Liam managed a faint, weary smile, the kind that came from too many years of carrying the weight of grown-up fears. I just wanted to keep him alive. After Mom died. I couldn't lose him too. The room settled into a heavy silence, only broken by the distant beeping of monitors and the soft rustle of papers. Elena gently closed her notebook. "Thank you, Liam. Sharing this helps us protect you and Noah, and other children who might be in the same danger." As she stood to leave, the detective allowed herself a moment to breathe deeply, pushing aside the heaviness that came with hearing so much suffering in such a young voice. This was no ordinary case. This was a reckoning. Outside the sterile confines of the interview room, the pieces of the investigation began to fit together like a grim puzzle. Photographs of the battered basement door showed the deep gouges, the marks where Liam had swung a makeshift pipe again and again, desperate for freedom. Medical reports detailed bruises, broken bones left untreated, and psychological scars impossible to see but deeply felt. The tally marks carved crudely into the doorframe, each one representing a day, a punishment, a moment of forgotten childhood. Rick Carter's reign of terror, long hidden behind a facade of normalcy, was now laid bare. Elena's determination hardened. She would ensure justice was served, not just for Liam and Noah, but for every child silenced by fear. The sterile light of the courthouse hallway felt harsh against Detective Elena Morales' skin as she stood outside the courtroom. The muffled sounds of legal proceedings seeped through the thick wooden door, voices raised in argument, papers shuffled with anxious energy. Inside, the trial of Rick Carter was underway. Elena clutched her file tightly, worn at the edges from endless handling. It contained everything: photographs of the punishment room, detailed medical reports of Liam's broken leg and Noah's cuts, the transcripts of Liam's harrowing testimony, and the painstakingly gathered evidence that painted a picture of unrelenting abuse. She glanced down at a small card tucked inside the folder, a hand-drawn picture from Noah, scribbled in bright colors. It showed two stick figures holding hands outside a big house with a smiling sun overhead. Above the house, in childish scrawl, was a single word: home. The image broke something inside her, the fierce hope of a child who had known so much darkness but still believed in light. Inside the courtroom, Liam sat on the witness stand, his hands folded in his lap, his legs carefully propped to avoid pain. His eyes, once dull and shadowed, now held a glimmer of cautious strength. He wasn't just a victim anymore, he was a voice. A beacon. The prosecution called him forward. Elena watched as Liam took a deep breath, his small frame straightening under the weight of attention. The room fell silent, every eye fixed on the boy who had survived a nightmare most adults could barely imagine. The lawyer's voice was gentle but direct. "Liam, can you please tell the court what it was like living in that basement?" Liam's voice was steady, clear, but filled with quiet sorrow. It was like being invisible. The walls were cold and hard. There was no sunlight, no windows to see outside. Just a mattress on the floor and two buckets. One for water, one for other things. We were locked in there whenever Rick said we were bad. He paused, swallowing hard, as the memories threatened to overwhelm. Sometimes it was for a few hours. Other times, days. I remember one time after Christmas, it was 3 days. No food. No water except from the bucket. I was scared, so scared. Noah, sitting beside him, clutched the edge of his seat, his small body trembling slightly. He didn't speak, but his eyes told their own story, one of pain and resilience intertwined. The courtroom hung on Liam's words. "Did anyone ever come to check on you?" Liam's gaze dropped to the floor. Sometimes Rick came down. But most of the time, he left us alone. We could hear him upstairs, drinking, laughing, like we weren't there. The lawyer nodded gently. "And what happened when the fire started?" Liam looked up, his eyes fierce now, burning with determination. "I knew we had to get out. The door was locked from the outside, so I broke it with a pipe. It hurt, my leg was broken, but I didn't care. I had to get Noah out. We crawled up the stairs through the smoke and fire. I kept telling him to stay close." Elena felt a lump in her throat. The bravery of this small boy defied explanation. "Thank you, Liam," the lawyer said softly. "Your courage saved your brother's life." Outside the courtroom, families whispered among themselves. Some nodded with quiet approval, others wiped tears from their eyes. Rick Carter sat at the defendant's table, gaunt and pale, his hands cuffed. His eyes darted nervously, a far cry from the imposing man who had ruled his household with terror. As the trial unfolded, evidence piled against him, neighbors' statements, photographs of the punishment room with its deep scratch marks and tally counts, testimony from teachers who had noticed bruises but were never allowed to probe deeper, medical experts confirming years of neglect. Each piece of proof painted a damning portrait of cruelty, of a man who had twisted discipline into abuse. Back at the hospital, Liam and Noah's lives were slowly beginning to heal. The Hendersons had completed the legal process to become their guardians, and the boys now lived in a warm, loving home filled with laughter and safety. Therapy sessions were regular. Noah found expression through drawing and play, while Liam struggled with words but found strength in sharing his story. One evening, Liam sat with Carol Henderson on the porch, watching the sun set behind the trees. "Do you think I'll ever feel normal?" he asked quietly. Carol smiled gently, her eyes full of hope. "Normal is a big word. But you're going to feel safe, loved, and free. And that's everything." Liam nodded, clutching his stuffed bear. "I want to be a hero for other kids like me." Carol reached out, squeezing his hand. "You already are." The Riverside community was still grappling with the shock when news of Rick Carter's arrest spread. The quiet neighborhood of Maple Street seemed quieter now, as if a collective breath had been held and not yet fully released. At the Riverside Children's Center, Liam and Noah began attending counseling sessions tailored to help children recovering from trauma. The center's walls were painted with soft pastel colors, covered in cheerful murals of trees and animals, designed to be a sanctuary from their painful memories. Liam's counselor, Dr. Miriam Chen, was a warm presence, patient, gentle, and unwavering in her commitment to help him rebuild his fractured sense of safety. Their sessions were not just about talking. Often, Liam would sit silently, tracing patterns in the clay or building worlds with wooden blocks, creating stories where he was safe and in control. One afternoon, Liam looked up at Dr. Chen with a vulnerability he rarely showed. "Sometimes," he said softly, "I feel like I'm still trapped. Like the punishment room is inside my head." Dr. Chen nodded, her voice soft but firm. "That's normal, Liam. Trauma lives inside us long after the physical danger is gone. But with time, and with help, those walls can come down. You're already strong enough to start." Noah, younger and less verbal, found his voice through art. His drawings were vivid, showing the basement, the locked door, but also the new home with open windows and bright sunlight. Each image a small step towards healing. Meanwhile, Detective Morales worked tirelessly behind the scenes. Building a case that would ensure Rick Carter faced the full weight of the law wasn't just about collecting evidence, it was about piecing together a mosaic of years of suffering, a narrative that no jury could ignore. She met with social workers, medical experts, and the Hendersons, gathering testimonies and building a comprehensive profile of Rick's pattern of abuse. The community, too, began to awaken. Neighborhood watch groups formed, parents discussed openly the signs of abuse they'd missed, and a local campaign was launched to educate families about child protection and mental health. Carol Henderson, once simply a kind neighbor, found herself at the heart of this movement, her role expanding from rescuer to advocate. "I just couldn't stand the thought of those boys suffering in silence," she said at a community meeting, her voice steady despite the tears she'd shed privately. Her words resonated, lighting a spark of awareness that rippled through the town. Back at the courthouse, the trial was entering its critical phase. Rick Carter's defense tried to paint him as a flawed but loving stepfather, arguing that his discipline was harsh but meant to teach respect. But the testimony from Liam was unshakable, a vivid, heart-wrenching account that left the courtroom breathless. Liam's voice faltered only once, when describing how Rick had kicked him, breaking his leg. But his resolve was stronger than ever. "No child deserves to be treated like that," he said firmly. "No child should ever be locked away in a dark room as punishment. That's not discipline. That's cruelty." The jury listened in silence. As the days passed, the boys began to reclaim pieces of their childhood, tentative first steps into school hallways, cautious laughter during family dinners with the Hendersons, quiet moments of peace in their new bedrooms painted bright blue and yellow. Each day was a victory. A building block towards a future once thought impossible. Winter had draped Riverside in a soft blanket of frost, turning the streets of Maple Street into quiet avenues lined with shimmering icicles and bare trees. Yet inside the cozy home of Tom and Carol Henderson, warmth radiated in every corner. It was a refuge, a place where Liam and Noah were learning, day by day, that safety wasn't just a word, but a feeling. Liam sat by the window, his blue cast gleaming under the sunlight filtering through the curtains. His gaze lingered outside, watching snowflakes drift lazily to the ground. For a boy who had spent so many days trapped in darkness, even a simple view of the world outside was precious. Carol entered with a gentle smile, carrying 2 mugs of hot cocoa. "Hey, champ. Ready for your therapy session today?" Liam nodded, grateful for her warmth. Therapy had been a slow journey, some days filled with breakthroughs, others heavy with shadows. But with Dr. Miriam Chen's help, he was beginning to unravel the tangled web of fear and guilt Rick had left behind. "Sometimes I think about the punishment room," Liam admitted softly as he took a sip, "like it's still there, lurking in my mind." Carol sat beside him, her voice soothing. "Those memories will always be a part of you. But they don't have to control you. You're stronger than that room. Stronger than what Rick wanted you to believe." Noah appeared, his cheeks flushed from the cold outside. He clutched a fresh drawing, a sun shining over 2 stick figures holding hands. "Look," he said shyly, holding it out. "This is us. In our new home." Liam smiled genuinely for the first time in days, the weight of the past easing just a little. Meanwhile, the courtroom battle reached its climax. The prosecution's case was airtight, their evidence painstakingly gathered by Detective Morales and her team. The judge listened intently as witnesses testified, social workers detailing the boy's behavioral changes, pediatricians describing physical and emotional scars, and neighbors recounting their suspicions and regrets. Rick Carter's defense tried to sow doubt, arguing discipline was necessary, and accusations exaggerated. But the jury saw through the facade. The pivotal moment came when Liam took the stand again, recounting the fire, the desperation, the pain, and the incredible courage it took to break free and save his brother. The courtroom was silent, hanging on every word. When the verdict was announced days later, relief washed over the Henderson household like a gentle tide. Guilty on all counts. Rick Carter would face years behind bars, years during which Liam and Noah could finally begin to heal without fear. But justice was only part of the story. Healing would take time, patience, and love. Tom and Carol dedicated themselves fully to the boys' recovery. They transformed their home into a haven, filled with laughter, music, and the scent of freshly baked cookies, things Liam and Noah had never known but were now learning to cherish. The community rallied around them, offering support through school, therapy, and friendship. Liam found strength in helping others, volunteering to speak about child abuse awareness at local events, turning his pain into purpose. Noah blossomed in soccer practice, his confidence growing with each goal scored. Together, they were rewriting their story, one filled with hope, courage, and the unbreakable bond of brotherhood. The soft glow of morning light filtered gently through the lace curtains of the Hendersons' home, casting warm patterns on the walls that had witnessed so much change, from fear and darkness to safety and love. Liam stirred awake in his bedroom, the once sharp edges of pain in his broken leg now softened by time, care, and the skilled hands of surgeons and therapists. His blue cast, once a stark reminder of cruelty, had become a symbol of resilience, a badge of battles won. He blinked slowly, taking in the familiar comfort of his new world, toys neatly arranged, shelves filled with books and drawings, walls painted with bright colors his little brother Noah had helped choose. Downstairs, the smell of fresh pancakes, real ones, not burnt toast, wafted upward, drawing a smile to Liam's lips. The sound of laughter, genuine, unguarded, drifted up from the kitchen, a melody that once seemed impossible. As he padded down the stairs on his good leg, Noah bounded up to him, clutching his favorite stuffed elephant, their small hands meeting in a silent pact of brotherhood and survival. At the kitchen table, Tom and Carol Henderson waited, their eyes filled with a mixture of pride and tenderness that only those who had fought hard to protect could know. "You ready for school today, Liam?" Carol asked, pouring syrup over the pancakes. Liam nodded, the weight of the past lifting just a little more with each new day. "I'm ready," he said, voice steady and hopeful. Outside, the world was awakening anew too. Maple Street, once shadowed by silence and secrets, now buzzed softly with life. Neighbors greeted each other with warmth, the community forever changed by the story of two brave boys who refused to be broken. Detective Elena Morales stood on the porch of the Henderson home later that day, watching Liam and Noah playing in the yard, the sun setting behind them, painting the sky with hues of gold and pink. She allowed herself a rare smile. Justice had been served, but more importantly, life was being rebuilt, piece by piece, day by day. Thank you for journeying with us through Liam and Noah's story, a tale of darkness, courage, and the enduring power of hope. If this story touched your heart, if it inspired you or made you reflect, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support means the world and helps us bring more stories that matter to light.